We'll see.
They're all at Zoom, so you can go.
Recalc, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just get your name
Sure. Sandy,
and your last name?
MATATHIA.
MATAHIA. And your address
10.
Yeah.
Stonewell.
in Reading?
Yep.
Perfect. It's nice to see you. We don't really get a lot of.
Yes, yeah.
We don't get anyone.
I know, no one- I'm always surprised by that.
Just happened to run into Mark and Cook's.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
Bye.
Oh, Mark.
sorry.
So we'll begin the meeting with taking attendance. So we got John Parsons.
Oh, you're on mute.
John. We read it.
I'm here.
Mark Doxa. Here. Montesini.
Here.
Mike Coltman.
Here.
Nora Bucko.
Here.
And John O'Leary. And if John Sassler joins us, we will then make sure that we have it. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the December meeting. So moved. Second. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none. We'll take the vote on accepting the minutes. John Parsons?
Yes,
Mark Doxer?
He said
Yes. Oh.
Did he say yes?
You did say yes. He said yes.
Okay, I was a yes.
Yeah.
I was out her off.
Montesino.
Yes.
Yes. Michael. Nora.
Yes.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is the update on the feasibility study. And we have two members, right? Yeah, so
Our mic is
whoever
on.
wants to go first.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll start. Yeah, so BH+A has really just kind of jumped into everything. We selected them obviously in December, and then they started interacting right away with town staff and just reaching out to me about who like some key people to be involved in the conversation would be. They've already done a pre-existing conditions analysis at the Pleasant Street Center. They had an electrician out there. They had a plumber out there. Rachel from BH+A was also there on site. So they did the whole existing conditions analysis and they'll give a report on that. They said overall that they thought the building was very well maintained, but a lot of the, the heating systems and the general systems in the building were nearing the end of their lifespan.
Oh, the flooding in the basements at times.
Yeah, so we did mention that to them in the conversation and Joe Huggins was also there in the conversation. And they were talking about some drainage around the building that may need to be assessed in the future if that was to be the site to be renovated or anything like that. But I'm sure once the actual analysis comes back with all their findings, maybe they'll have a little bit more detail on that, but we did mention that to them, which was great. And then we had met with them last week and their next goal, which I had sent some communication out to all of you, as the recalc board, they're gonna do a stakeholders meeting. So they'd like to meet with the recalc committee, they'd like to meet with the recreation committee and COA, yes. And then they're also meeting with staff. So I'm including Andrew McNichol from planning because they're so involved with CPDC and site plan review, and they have like a lot of knowledge in that area. And I invited Chuck in conservation because he knows kind of the ins and outs of where all the wetlands land in a lot of these areas. And then obviously Matt Cornelis as the acting town manager and the teams in recreation and elder and human services will be a part of that meeting too. So after they do the stakeholders meetings, I think the next thing that they'll do is start to engage the community and kind of tell them what steps that they've been taking. So they plan to do some community forums or along the way to keep people informed on what they're doing. So there is a nice little timeline too that they've laid out, which I think maybe was shared in the last meeting, right, too? Yes, awesome.
Looks like this. It's got stars, colors, times.
Yeah, so if you guys want me to resend that out to people, that might be really helpful to
Yes, I don't.
just kind of keep track of that. I don't know if it was shared in an email yet with all of you, so I could definitely outline that. And then anything Mark wants to add or Michael wants to add would be awesome.
Are those their agendas?
As-
Concom.
Oh, are you?
Sorry,
Oh, okay.
we got pointed in the wrong direction. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I was like, oh, well, yes.
Really?
So a couple things. Sandy, why don't you come up to the table? Join us. So Sandy Menethai is a neighbor and I was chatting with him about what's going on. Actually, he's been following a little bit about what's going on. By background, he's been an environmental lawyer, the right description. And as we're thinking about some of the different sites, particularly Simon's Way, it struck me that Sandy might have a lot of information to share, value, and kind of guide us and help what was going on. So I asked if he would join the meeting today and kind of introduce himself to us. And sounds like it'd be a great person to work with in the process. Did I
Thank you.
screw up, miss
Thank
anything?
you.
Thank you.
No, I was a lawyer out of Boston in environmental land use and real estate for about 35 years, living in Reading, raising a family here. And my wife and I have had some roles in town, but recently retired, both of us. And so this was a kind of a fit in a number of ways. And just so happened, I was talking with Mark about this, and at least from the sounds of it, you have a sort of a site selection decision, or at least selection process to go through. And my background involved a lot of major projects and a lot of project alternatives and alternative sites for different programs for an array of clients over the years. So I'm kind of bringing that, although it's a little dated at this point, I'm a little rusty on some of the things. The Simon's Way site stood out to me because there's some history there and some fill there. And I used to do a fair amount of that work, both under hazardous waste, as it's sometimes called, and solid waste. Sort of different paths that you might follow from a state regulatory standpoint to address some of the issues there and try to find some comfort if that's possible.
Where you been, Sandy?
So I thought
Good
maybe
find,
it'd be a great
Mark.
person to have come to the table and chat a little bit.
Especially if you, when the.
Can we get him down there tomorrow?
Great, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So maybe if I could just add to what Jenna was saying too, so there were a few of us that were tasked with sharing information with, I call them BHNA, whatever plus A.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do-
We should ask them what they want to be.
Yeah, the
official
architect.
Yeah.
And so we were able to share all of the information, all the work that we have done, that have been done with UMass Studies, all the other activities, and some of the new stuff that we're doing, surveys and other activities, so that they were up to speed. There is a desire on the part of, I think, the town and BHNA to get additional input on a kind of advisory basis. That ideally would be done in a smaller group based on their experience. In addition to all the public meetings to be held, and the meetings with Recalc and COA and RAC, for example, and others. So there have been some discussions, and I think that what we want to do to keep everything completely transparent to the community is have BHNA kind of lead that process of, hey, where do they want to get some informal input, basically, between the meetings that are taking place. So rather than have kind of us have designated people to do it, I think it really is BHNA that should be kind of saying, hey, I've met some people, I'd like this person to participate in this, just to get some feedback kind of in the interim, in addition to all these formal meetings. So my suggestion is that's the way we think about how to work with them. Basically them leading, telling us who they want, what they want. There's no voting or other activities or decision-making that goes on with that. It's advisory solely, and it all comes back to us and to the other public boards, and eventually to the select board in terms of
The
decision.
parameters of the public meetings, because, we have the whole UMass process. They're not gonna replicate any of that, or are they?
Well, so what they've been talking about so far is they have these things they call charrettes, which is kind of the one that I kind of like, but it's an opportunity first to gather input, but then as they're getting the input, to start sharing what some of their ideas look like and get feedback on the ideas as it's kind of progressing, and listen to what the community is liking and not liking, in addition to what's happening with the boards. And I think that it behooves us to be very, very, very transparent in terms of what's going on. Let people see this as early as possible to give their input, as opposed to it going, marching way down, and then suddenly people are like, oh, I didn't know anything about it, and that's crazy. These folks are pros at that. And so they should be kind of the lead in terms of what's going on. The point person, obviously, with them is Jenna, in terms of the town and the town's contract with them and what's going on. But the starting point they had, based on what Fidel had shared earlier on, what Jenna has shared since, and we've talked about, has focused on the current Pleasant Street site as a possible location. Simon's Way as a possible location. It was starting to narrow pretty quickly because there really isn't any other open space in town. Possible exception of Oakland Road. And I was able to dig up a bunch of the old material that was done, I don't know how many years ago, a while, when it was being considered as a early childhood learning center. So they did all sorts of borings already into the ground. They have all sorts of ideas of this, if you are going to build, this would be the place to build, that kind of stuff. So that's all now been shared with them as well. And they're exploring, and Jenna talked about they've already done the Pleasant Street Center. And I don't know what their process is for the others. I guess that's still, they'll be kind of working on that.
Would the town ever consider like the vacant building that's right past Walgreens? That was the athletic.
So that's not owned by the town.
I know, but I'm saying with the town,
Yes, it is, it continues to be probed on a regular basis with the private owner of that land, who has not expressed interest in participating, other than if and when we're doing building, they'd love to lease us some space during the interim. But in terms of that becoming a part of the vision that they have,
no eminent domain possibility is risen.
I haven't heard. an
Might be cheaper in
exploration.
some ways than some of the old. That's.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is that there are people that keep poking at it and offering new ideas. My thought was that once BHNA engages a little bit more, they may be able to say, hey, we worked in these other communities where we did a mixed living, senior center, retail, all sorts of things, to show that to them, and then maybe they would take a different look at it.
Where's this?
It's a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
What Market Basket Plaza
Yeah.
at the
Old
end, closest to the
Gym. The
Walgreens.
old Gold's Gym.
We've also talked further down to the other owners down there. You went kind of straight ahead to the Walgreens and just keep going.
Yep.
We've talked to them. We've talked to the buildings around RMLD. I thought you were going to talk about the old castle as a possible site too, the unused building in the middle of the RMLD facility. There's a lot of work needs to go into that potentially. There's some other reasons. So that's been pursued also.
What about Saint Athanasius somehow that came up in some conversations?
Yeah, so the notion that some of the churches may have extra space and at some point be interested in doing something with them is really, really interesting. None of them are available today. Fidel had pursued them a bit, and there's no timeline on when they would make a decision. So for us, that's kind of a non-starter. Could be forever.
Well, unless they were given a deadline. I mean,
Well, we can't give them a
no,
deadline.
no, in the sense that we have to know if you're interested, if it's a
Yeah,
possibility.
so today the answer is they're not.
Okay, no, I mean, that's,
They're not.
yeah.
Yeah. But this is good. I mean, we gotta keep poking because there's so few potential
Right.
spots. And if people know of others, that's great. We keep encouraging it. But remember early in the process last year, Fidel showed some maps basically of different locations that we thought were possibilities. So right now it's kind of, those are the three that they're looking at. If others come in, that'd be great. What we call the Walgreens building, the one that we were trying to pursue, will open as a dollar store quite soon. So that is a lease already in place for that as that.
Cheap and downtown.
So that's the site side of things. Is there anything else? Oh, yes. So the approach that they are exploring right now is to think about the notion of senior, older adult oriented facilities with the possibility of adding another space that right now we're going to call the gym. And the notion of that is that if it were to be more of a community center with dedicated space for older adults, that would be a big chunk of what you'd add to it. And that would kind of create it. So the way that they are planning to look at this is to kind of take that dedicated older adult space first, this gymnasium building, and it's not just a gymnasium, but it's a gymnasium. Multi-use, yeah. But featuring a gym. And then looking at what the overlaps are and what would, to go from one to the other, what does it take? So that we would get a chance to explore those ideas, how much space they require, what they cost. And then we need the community to give us some feedback and say, what do you want?
And how is it gonna tie into the Simon's Way exploratory process?
So it needs to, and it hasn't yet at all.
Okay.
So I, on my list is to reach out to Carlo and at least start a discussion about that, just so we're kind of all on the same page about what's happening. The group that put together, they responded to the RFI, the request for information at Simon's Way. There was one person that responded. They were supposed to present to the select board last night. The lead person lost his voice and couldn't present. So that's pushed at least 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, at least two, to hear kind of, what that picture was. That picture did not include senior center at all. That was a recreational center.
Or-
It was a recreation center, ice, pool, gym.
Yeah.
That's sort of.
So, exactly what the best use for that space is to be determined. That notion is kind of a public-private partnership notion. And, the town does own the land. Some of it is leased to the Ice Authority. But it's still part of the town. And what exactly to do, hopefully, I think the HNA with this approach can kind of help us. And think about the different sites. If you were to think about that kind of more community center orientation, I don't think the Pleasant Street Center site can accommodate the amount of space we're talking about. No idea about Oakland Road, if it could or it couldn't, but Simon's Way could.
And then one of the complications about Simon's Way is of course the city land. And one of the things that might be very useful is to actually really determine what part of that property is the leased property. And what's not part of the leased property. And because if you end up building on the leased property, parking lot in the back, I'm assuming you're gonna have to create more parking someplace. And so if that's in the Zany land that's contaminated, what are the parameters? And we have to figure that out. At some point, somebody has to figure that out.
Yeah, so one of the questions that comes up is, if you're just hot topping, does that have different requirements versus the foundations and all sorts of other things? All TBD. Right. And the other thing that comes with that is, we do have a map of kind of what's buildable of the purchased properties. There should be a separate map, not all together, but a separate one that shows the leased space.
Right, and I was doing a little work on this. I was looking up the property and the lots or whatever it is. And it looks like it goes right through the Ice Authority, one plot. So I have no idea where this goes. So it wasn't an obvious thing when you look at the tax code things of all the plots.
And are they thinking of, because you may know, because the baseball field and the soccer field as just being open to be used for this purpose as well?
Yeah,
Is
there was
that-
an article that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, there was an article that came out kind of insinuating that
Right, I
no
saw
one uses
that.
the
That's-
baseball field
Yeah.
or the outfield, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Actually, Babe Ruth uses that field, the high school uses that field.
I know because I
Yeah.
used to coach
Soccer.
soccer and we used to have to wait if there was a baseball and
Yeah,
parking.
and-
When they talk about that, that's the only parking for those fields.
So I think a vision is to say, let's just envision all the space that we have there, decide what are the things that have to be there and figure out what the best place is for
Yeah.
each of them.
Yeah.
Not take away X, but rather say, maybe there's a better location for
Yeah,
X than it
exactly.
currently is
Mhm.
in. But that would be part of the master plan. And, part of this too is what is the community willing to work with?
Right.
The reality is, we have this project, we have the Killam School project, and the select board is having a discussion about whether or not to create a committee to look at the Community Preservation Act. And the timing, some would say the ideal timing for the Community Preservation Act would be November of this year because of the presidential election. So the community needs to know all of these different things that are going on. We're a part of it.
Mhm.
And I think everybody wants to know what's all the stuff I need to be thinking about? What else is coming down the road soon?
And we don't want just the loudest voices.
Exactly.
Right.
And, starting in August of this year, get it right, I believe that the library, between the library, the Wood End School and the high school, they're all coming off either this August or next August.
Right, two of them coming off this.
Yeah, so two this August and then
That's
one
correct.
afterward,
That's-
right? So the total impact of those, I think, was estimated about $300 per year for the average
On the tax.
house on your tax rate. Those are all coming off, which also shows that the town does multiple projects at the same time. And I think that has been our mantra. I think that's continued to be our mantra.
I mean, the one thing about the parking back there, it is important for the baseball and soccer fields. coach soccer back there.
Mhm.
But if they have to walk an extra 50 yards to get to their field,
Well,
that's okay.
right, but it's
But
not
that
like
gets into
it's.
the zany land and whether you can actually pay that. And,
Yeah.
um,
And
make it up.
I think the article too, and like the way that the Edge Sports kind of positioned the facility, I think it was right where right where the field was,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
So
And that's,
for that, there's not
it's
maybe
not
some,
wetlands, but you,
yeah,
anybody who's down there, no, that floods, the baseball field is. Area floods.
See the swamp.
that's interesting.
So so all
Different
of this
parts.
needs to kind of start. Yeah, I'm trying to come up with the right word, but that's.
That's a good one.
Yeah, as part of kind of what we're thinking about. And I think so BHNA is kind of doing the start and thinking about what are the space requirements that we'd be talking about? If you're gonna do this community centers version, what does that mean? And how much more space is that? How much more cost is that? I think that the town needs to understand cost parameters here. How much are we talking about? What would it be for this? What would it be for that?
That's what they're supposed to.
And,
Yeah.
and one of the things that they were talking about in the mixed use kind of thing, if you build a senior center, there's a lot of space that would end up being multi-use space if you did a community center.
Yes,
So
Right, that's
you
what-
get double use out of
Right.
the significant portion.
Yeah, and we know from our survey that there's interest in a discussion of community center, at least dedicated space. So, right now, there's one site that would seem to accommodate that, and maybe the other. Again, Oakland Road, I have no idea. We didn't do an early childhood center there for a whole variety of reasons.
right, one of it, I thought there was ledge and it was uneven and.
There's ledge and it's uneven. Oh, yeah.
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 And my
More-
wife, you would
more.
have to take down a lot of trees, so she
More.
was not in favor.
Yeah, no, understood. And there's a picture of kind of the quote unquote best buildable space. That's kind of what I saw. And then it started to get a bit more technical and I figured, let an architect look at it instead of me. So I think that's kind of where things are. The timeline has, they're aware that they should be giving an update to the select board in March and town meeting in April, or maybe the select board in early April and town meeting in late April. So that's in the plan. And their expectation is they'll be able to present, it says draft feasibility study at the end of April, which is when town meeting is.
Now, are they gonna have a? Is Alan gonna allow an oral presentation or just a
We need
written
to explore
submission?
that. We need to explore that. I don't know yet. So I did talk to Matt about that question. Matt Cronulis, the acting town manager, he's gonna pursue it with Alan.
Yeah, 'cause I definitely think it would, something like this should be an oral presentation, if people don't.
Yeah.
A meeting.
Yeah, we may want to share our thoughts with Matt and Alan. Might not be a bad idea.
Did you say it was, sorry, say select board and town meeting in the spring?
So recalc recalc works for the select board.
Yeah.
Right, and so I think the expectation is that what recalc is kind of presenting, which will be through BHNA, should come to the select board first, kind of as an update.
Okay.
And then also to town meeting, and the timing of presenting to the select board and having it in the book for town meeting is probably identical.
So spring.
Yeah, so that's the feasibility study. That's not all that we've hired them to do, right? That's phase 2. Phase 3 is to do schematic drawings with cost estimates. And that's due, according to their schedule, late June. And I think that's what we kind of had always kind of talked about when we saw the RFQ went out. I think it said 6 to 8 months. And this is closer to the 6 than the 8.
Well, those are the first cut at all those. That's their submittal of the draft final report. There's like a month or two
To
for us to massage it.
So I'm thinking that a lot, hopefully,
Their final, I thought it was like August.
not on here.
No, I thought it was closer to October.
Maybe I'm missing a step.
And Mark, when you mentioned that they want to do community outreach, what's the format for that happen? How are they gonna do that?
So they've been asking a little bit, what's the best thing for the town? And so we've just shared thoughts about what's worked in the past. What things are.
You were right. This was off the page when I was looking at it. Oh, I think it's the end of June,
I think it is. We should just make
Yeah.
sure that.
4th of July.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully good fireworks.
But we wouldn't be.
Sorry, I lost your question.
Right? So that's just.
How are they thinking about
Oh,
doing?
how to do the outreach? So, they want to offer a series of meetings. Some are just kind of basic listening sessions. Some are these charrettes, the idea of kind of showing something and getting some feedback on it. They have done a lot of work in other communities also. And when we were on the evaluation committee, there was a lot of stuff we saw that looked really interesting. Also, it means best practices, right? That's what they know it. That's kind of why we brought them in. And they've done a lot of stuff recently. So I think they're still open to ideas in terms of how to do the outreach. They're talking about days and nights in terms of when to do it.
Yep.
Different locations, where to do it.
Yep, engage different audiences, have one at the library, have one at the Pleasant Street Center so people can see the center.
Bring food, people come.
Yes.
Timing's
Be an option.
gonna be tricky because of the zoning. Right now, I don't see zoning. I'd be very surprised if zoning passed in April. So that means,
Assuming it comes back in November.
yeah,
So I think one of the things we have to understand also, and I don't understand it, maybe, okay, let's say we get to June, and this is all done, and they come back and say, boom, it's this much money, and this is here are the drawings. What's the exact next step? Is that now engage the community, go to town meeting? I think so, but I'm not sure. I need to make sure. And so, when does that happen? It could be that there's a special town meeting. For a variety of different reasons. Special town meetings aren't that expensive because it's mostly volunteers.
yeah, well, you don't get many people, well, for something like this, you would.
So, and summer is not good, but September is,
Yes.
and, even October. So, let's see where things are. And then I think that the feasibility study for the schools, their timing, I think, is finishing in August. So not too dissimilar.
Right, but
They're gonna come to town meeting in April of 25.
I was gonna say, because they have to wait on the state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they'll still have to go through the same process though, town meeting and voters. But yeah, we're gonna see what it is. And look, I think the voters wanna know what's coming.
I was gonna say,
School, senior center, maybe CPA, what else you got? Just so everybody sees it and knows it and set priorities.
any questions, John?
Just the last question for me. You mentioned the Community Impact Act or something?
Oh, yeah, the preservation.
Community Preservation Act.
I'm not.
The Community Preservation Act is, it's an opportunity for the town to allocate a certain percentage of new taxes, has to be above and beyond, we're already paying on real estate taxes, into a fund that is designated only for three purposes, see if we can get this right. One of them is housing, the other is recreation, and the third is historic stuff. The beauty of doing it is that right now, the state adds to whatever you raise. And they've been adding anywhere from, I think, 10 to 50%. And you have to spend a certain amount of it each year. There's certain requirements. You can also set up some exemptions for certain communities, like seniors, as an example, could turn out to be exempt, or they could exempt the first X value of your house, things like that. And it turns out, I think they showed an example, I think 1% turned out to be like $84 for a household, something like that. It has to go through town meeting and a vote the same way. And the folks that are proponent, but by the way, I think
Came close.
it came really close last time, which is years ago.
Oh, I don't know, it's been a while, yeah.
So in those days, when it didn't go through, it was running out of money, matching money. What they've done is they've raised the fees when you register a new deed. The fees for those went way up. That's what's funding. More than half the communities in Massachusetts are doing it. I think it's a lot more, but it's at least most. So we're kind of behind a little bit. And there are a number of other communities that want to get into it this November. That's
A lot of them will use it for recreation purposes.
Yeah,
Well, so
playground.
Playgrounds, yeah, recreation space, historic renovation.
Can you, I don't recall, is conservation, in other words, if we, when we had that possibility of buying the land from the golf course, they wouldn't have got one of the lots, unfortunately. That I think would have been an acceptable thing too. wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
I
I
think
think
it's open
so.
space.
Yeah, I think that counts too. That would have been a good
Recreation
use
and
of those
open
funds
space.
also. So there are so many great things that come from it.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of stuff for a homeowner to
So it's
understand.
unclear whether the senior center would be considered, but is senior center considered recreation?
Well, so I think there's,
Historical
if you did
building,
Pleasant Street
Oh,
Center, it
historic,
probably is
right.
historical building.
Historical and recreation.
Yeah, so it,
Sure.
a lot of potential. But you know, look, there are a lot of moving parts and that's why we need to really focus. get
And does
this-
that have to go to town meeting and then to the ballot as well? Yeah.
Anything that's money.
Thank you.
All good, all right. Current center visits, action plan moving forward. I think
Yeah.
This is, okay.
Yeah, I heard that there was some discussion in the last meeting to get some feedback from Chris and I about how things were going.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think collectively we might have gotten to 4 or 5 places. And we were still just trying to we kept following up with certain people and they weren't responding or said they didn't have time to meet, but they would answer the survey, but then they haven't yet. So I think it was just a busy time with the holidays. So I can reach out again, and make some calls in the new year and see how it goes. And then my ask would be if I'm having trouble still, and Chris and I are having trouble kind of tracking people down, if we can kind of designate just certain towns, like, hey, can you tackle Danvers and give them a call? Can you tackle Tewksbury and give them a call? And then also I think what would be super helpful is if everyone could just send me their availability so I can, instead of calling Danvers and saying, oh, hey, we're available on these few days, and then I reach out to you all and no one's available on those days, then I gotta go back to them. So just having a list of when you're available, so I
Right,
can
the
say,
problem was, and I've heard it from other members.
oh, okay.
You can't ask us on a Tuesday if you're available Wednesday.
Yeah,
You
okay,
know,
yeah,
that's
right,
that's
so,
hard.
right,
And also, if
Right.
it's too far in advance, in other words, medical appointments come up, babysitting for grandchildren comes up, and I don't
Sure.
necessarily know. I mean, I actually I'm quite willing to prioritize, doing this.
Yeah.
But it'd be hard for me to say, for sure, I'm available all these days.
yeah, then that could be really complicated.
Yes.
But maybe you're thinking
For
about,
us.
hey, how about next week and the week after? Could you share when you'd be available?
Yeah, so that way I could call them in advance and say, hey, we have some members of Recalc that are available on these 2 dates within the next couple weeks. Can you accommodate those dates?
And-
And then I think that would be really, really
It might be easy
helpful.
at least to tell Jenna dates that we're absolutely
Not.
not available
Yeah,
under any circumstances.
Sure. But you're nodding your head?
Do you
Makes
wanna
sense.
send us kind of a little format, or do you want just emails? What's the best way to give you kind of?
yeah, I think emails is fine, just like, hey, Jenna, I'm, definitely not available on these days work better for me, I know, everyone's in so many different directions and they don't get paid to be a volunteer, unfortunately. So, and again, obviously, Chris and I can easily go to these too, on our own, but it's so much more beneficial to have 1 or 2 of you there. Just,
Oh, I found it very helpful, but.
yeah, no, it's
So maybe-
great to have you there.
Do you want from next Monday, maybe out 2 weeks?
Yeah, that'd be
That'd
awesome.
be a good start.
I would
And I
say,
can start calling.
I was just
people
saying,
again right
because
away.
it's Martin Luther King Day
Oh,
on
great.
Monday, next week would probably not be the week. Because
It's a
people are
4-day
probably
week.
gonna get, yeah.
Whatever
Sure.
you think works best.
So was it last 2 weeks in January or what?
Yeah, so that would.
Yes,
My calendar.
yes, it would. yeah.
Okay,
Almost 2.
yeah, so whatever the last 2 weeks of January, what your availability is. If you can get it to me by maybe next Tuesday, so I can start following up with people on Tuesday. So that way it gives them a little bit of lead time too. And I think it was just everyone kind of being busy around the
It
holidays.
was sort of a crunch, yeah.
Yeah, there was a crunch and then I had some time off and then,
We'll see.
yeah. A lot of people were sick. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So thank you. Yeah, that would be great and very helpful and hopefully we can.
How about the
get it
sites
done.
that you did go see, anything revealing?
Yeah, I thought he said anything revealing.
From the
I thought so.
Yeah.
What's your feedback on Burlington, you and John? I was with you, but
Got my notes here. Trying to remember. They, like, transportation, they get monies from Leahy.
Yep.
To pay for their transportation.
Too late.
and all of their
What?
fitness,
Late.
What?
and all of their fitness programs.
And all their fitness programs.
Are Leahy funded?
Yep, $30,000 a year they got.
Wow.
And I was like, Winchester's part of the Leahy system, but my understanding is Reading's the second biggest number of people going to Winchester Hospital after Woburn. So,
Another funding source
Yeah.
maybe here.
Great.
Yep, and they use Uber and GoGo Grandparent
right,
and their Uber system is for all of their residents. So all ages, disabilities, like all-inclusive transportation program.
right, like what they'll do is they'll pay the first $5 towards it, which
Yep.
would cover basically local, but if you wanna go further, then you can, and you pick up the additional cost.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought
It's
the
very
transportation
successful.
was very creative.
Yeah.
And being able to do also doing the physical exercise, being able to get that paid for it. So a lot of things are paid. People don't have to pay, so.
Right.
So that's.
Yep, and then the other thing that I thought they were a little behind the 8 ball with was the programming registration. So they have like one day where people come down and pay in person for their registrations. So they don't have like any other format, which I thought was like a little bit like archaic. No,
Yeah.
there's no like online capability to do anything
You
and
couldn't call?
yeah, like it's very strict. You have to like be there on a certain day to register for the new session or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I think the other
We used to
side,
do that.
the other side of what happens is though, when you open it up and it's limited, just like programs here, is people who on the computer like for a second,
Right.
It's like people buying tickets to some of these,
Yeah.
rock groups. So everything's filled up.
Right,
So the regular people who don't have easy access to a computer, they said that they get left out.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Sometimes the people with the most need have the least
Yeah.
ability to do that.
Yeah, so there's gotta probably be like a go-between. There'll be 25 spots available if you call or come in, and there'll be 25 spots available online. And then you kind of just gauge it by who's participating, who's not participating. Because certainly there's folks who, if it's a nighttime program, maybe they can't get to the center to sign up in person, or they're more apt to sign up online than in person. So I think having both capabilities to move into the future is really beneficial. But I definitely see that point where like you have that vulnerable population and you don't want to leave them out. So,
and they get 75 to 100 people for their exercise.
yeah,
So just, we are trying to benchmark other centers around us, and we create a series of questions focused on programming, finances, how do you pay for stuff, transportation.
yeah, the other thing too with,
Oh, they're in a building with the gym, so they get that 2 hours a week.
right, because recreation also
Over
is in
and above
that
their
building.
own, they have a hall, place, but they get that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all the spaces except for the gym they have, the senior center. This
They
is
don't do
senior
much
center.
with meals.
You know what, I'm sorry, who's that?
They don't do much with meals as far as group. It's one day a week. And then they have the home delivered meals. They do 55 to 60 home.
And do they use Minuteman? Who do they
Yes.
use? Yeah,
Yes.
Hey, man,
For meals?
yeah,
services.
Yeah.
And what did you say about payment? How do they pay? Do they, people pay for programs? Are they all free or
I think that the Burlington are all free.
they're all free? So
Yeah.
they don't collect any money.
Yeah, and Andover is different. Andover does charge fees for certain programs. Needham also does the same thing. They charge for certain programs.
Do they collect cash or they do, you know, they do?
Best practices, no cash. Yep, so,
I mean, do they use like tile, not tile?
yep, so
Square
Andover,
or
yep,
something?
Andover will use, I think they have two systems. One is Square.
Yeah.
And Needham, I'm not sure exactly, but they do collect, they do online registrations and things like that with money. And then the other thing that a lot of the towns have is revolving funds too for their senior centers. So just like recreation has a revolving fund, so if you're charging X amount for the program, then you're just offsetting it, paying the instructor from that revolving fund. So you're not actually funding something in the general annual budget. You're just, paying for what you're doing really with the fees collected. So, it's a really good way to do it. So I'm hoping to,
Burlington had
Use that.
10 staff.
yeah,
A lot of mental health needs were identified. So they have a referral service with William James.
They have private
So do we.
spaces for,
Right.
they have private
We have a
offices.
referral with William James.
oh, do it. I don't-
Yeah,
The town,
to the town. Town of Reading does.
When the discussion came up at town meeting about mental health and a need for additional resources, that came out, right? They had that contract.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Needham used some of their ARPA funds too for counseling for seniors, which I thought was kind of nice. For mental health, like coming out of the pandemic, so they got a certain amount of sessions.
Did they have space, obviously, for private conversations?
Yes, yeah, and multiple social workers, certified
Yeah,
social
2.5.
workers.
Really?
So at BH&E,
Full-time.
did they do all of Needham or part of Needham?
I think they
Needham.
did the renovation.
I think
yes.
they did Needham.
Yeah, it was a really great building, and Needham, just like Burlington, their fitness program is really popular, like they have a gym. So, yeah, Anna went with me and several, like they said, probably 40, 50 people are rolling out of the gym every single day and they charge for the gym membership. Like, not very much, I forget how much it was, maybe like $10 a month or something. But if you have 100 people coming in and out of the gym a month,
For the fitness instructors and things like that.
yeah, it pays for the oversight of the gym and.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting a lot of good feedback from the visits.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John, what did you think? And Nora too, because you met with Wakefield, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought the Burlington thing was very informative. I think you've mentioned everything, and I thought the most impressive thing was the fact that all of their fitness programs are paid for by Leahy. I
Yeah,
mentioned
that's
to Chris
great.
down at the senior center that it would be great if somebody from Reading could approach Winchester Hospital and see if, Winchester couldn't do something, even if you get a certain amount of funds out of them, it would be good.
The banks too. They all have community monies to disperse.
Any takeaways from Wakefield?
Wakefield it was an older building. It was a school, but it actually, there's space, they have a lot of space. Like their classes can hold 80 exercise level. They have a huge downstairs, like not a cafeteria, but a lunch area. Very large. Then they have an actual kitchen that they can produce. The transportation was interesting. She said that needs more drivers. They have a van. You pay by the trip or the round trip, depending on the distance. And they actually went, because I think a lot of people want rides to Boston. That's the issue, getting to the doctor in Boston. And they'll go to Peabody, Danvers, but she said the request is to go even further towns. Zumba's very popular there. She said they have like 40 students. They have night programs for some of the younger 60 plus, like Medicare, getting on Medicare programs are popular. They have the pom pom cheerleader program, which is popular. What else? They don't do hybrid, but they're set up. They have a huge computer screen in a room for computer. But they haven't done any hybrid classes yet, but they're planning on it. She was very busy though. She gave us a nice tour but she didn't fill out all the financial information. She said to Chris she would, and I don't know if she.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the people didn't know that offhand, so I went on Burlington's website, I went on,
Oh, when you
You know,
found the
yeah.
financial.
yeah, I just found it in like the budget
No idea. the
packets or
funding.
whatever.
She said something about a formula grant.
Yeah.
From
familiar with
Elder
that.
Affairs,
Yeah, we
it's
get
so
that
much
every year.
per elder.
Oh, okay. But yeah, they do pay for their program, minimal fee, $2, $5, maybe wood carving is a cost.
And they don't have a lot of staff there, right, Krista?
No. Oh, and that was one thing she said, the person that does there's a lot of transportation calls and it's through the receptionist. So she's a lot of time to get somebody a ride,
Yeah,
And I guess there's some software available that could do this, some kind of scheduling software. Software to register for programming, but no, a lot of it's come in the front door and see somebody at the front desk and there isn't that.
Yeah. they have a social worker and a nurse.
She didn't mention that. She didn't mention that. She was a nurse, actually, she's the director, but she didn't talk about other staff.
She probably does that on the side.
That's why she's so busy.
Yeah.
Double duty. Awesome.
I can.
Anything else, John, to add, or?
No, you and Jenna pretty much summed up everything about Burlington, and that's the only one that I've been on.
Okay. All right, so we have to move. The action step on that one is that by next Tuesday, we'll get to Jenna our availability. At very least, the dates that we absolutely can't make it. Or do you want, well, or would you just rather be positive? The days we can make it, which
Yeah, there could
obviously
probably
tells you the
be,
same thing.
it's probably fewer days available than not available, right? I'm assuming, because everyone's so busy.
You want dates and times, though, right?
Yeah, dates
that's
and
just a
times,
date.
yeah.
If you have all of Tuesday, that's awesome, but if you have Tuesday afternoon, it's helpful too.
Thank you, guys.
That's all we had on the agenda.
Was communication plan not on that?
No,
No. One thing that relates to what we already talked about.
okay.
What's the best way to engage Sandy here? So,
Didn't we have an adjunct person or
Associate.
Associate, yeah.
do we have associate
No,
slots?
that wasn't in,
Yeah, we didn't do
because
it.
we weren't a standing committee, right?
Yeah, there's some reason I think why we did.
Oh, but we
talked about-
we indicated that we could have other people, especially when we even talked about
Consultants.
working groups.
Yeah.
Right,
I might-
I think we said
That's
we
what it was.
we didn't wanna do the formal thing,
Right.
and then we'd have to go get a approval for that.
Those 60 bucks earlier this year, an additional 1 to 2 associate members, I think is actually here in the. I'm reading page 2 of it. Committee should be made up of 7 voting members. And then it says. An additional 1 to 2 associate members, preferably with background interest in financing options for programs or other civic organizations, all to be recommended by Basque. So I think that if you're interested, you could certainly apply for an associate membership.
That program.
That's one thing. The other would be maybe, would it make sense to introduce or share some information with Rachel and Joel from BHNA? At least indicate.
Yeah, that he has this expertise and
And when we're having a discussion about Simon's Way in particular, that would be awesome to.
yeah, definitely. You're okay with that, Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can plug in pretty readily on sort of site selection. I think I have a feel for the type of criteria that they would be looking at. Having done a lot of that. But the one sort of pinpoint issue is if feasibility of Simon's Way is going to turn a lot on environmental considerations. There's probably some ways of probing that to determine whether or not it's just too complicated to think about and do, or whether or not there might be a path to take, which is not too scary.
Yeah.
They probably have an environmental consultant on board. But more from the construction point of view.
The construction is, I mean, if you're talking just about paving, it's the equivalent of a cap. And you're really not disturbing what's below ground, which could be a type of activity that would cause and contribute to contamination, disturbance and behavior. So staying away from working below ground kind of gives you some safe space, if you will, from that. But it certainly is not going to take you out of status liability in as much as you own or operate a site, be it a site of a release or a site where solid waste is disposed of. So I think the question is whether or not anybody thinks it's such a site now. Whether or not you do have knowledge or somehow need to get it and do get it and implicate yourself to something that you don't want to get into. So you kind of have to know how close you can step up to the line to determine how much of a problem it is, but not go over the line and get yourself into a problem you can't get out of it readily anyway.
Careful before that first shovel.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hire the people that did Jordan's, they kept the dump.
They have Sanborn Head, which is a good fit for this purpose. They're a good consulting firm to have.
The BHNA has?
Yeah, according to their proposal.
Oh, great, awesome, okay, great, so you took a look, awesome,
Yeah.
thank you, that's great. Yeah, no, I think we should welcome more help and input.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Did we have a date that BHA is gonna reach out to Recalc to try to get a meeting?
17th.
Okay, next.
Yep, next Wednesday.
Okay, so based on responses, that'll get posted.
Yep, I posted it already.
Right, because she already sent out asking for
And
responses.
we have you, because you just accepted before the meeting. We have 4 affirmative. Because Nora, Ron, Mark, and John O'Neill, 6. You could also join remote if you need to. I don't know, did you say you couldn't make that next Wednesday, right?
I would say there's maybe a 5% chance that I can make it.
It's okay.
By myself.
5%'s better than 0. And John, do you think you
But
could
it's
make the
really
meeting
close to
for
zero.
recalc?
Yeah, I guess I just have to decide whether to go to the recalc one or the council on aging one, where they're gonna be the same presentation.
Yeah.
Where's your
Council on
hot
Aging-
line, Joe?
Council on Aging has 15, Council on Aging has 15 people. This one is smaller, so I'll probably come to recalc rather than council.
Right answer.
All right, but if we need you for a quorum for COA, we might need to change that. I don't know.
Or both,
We are good about, okay.
I think I RSVP.
So what am I supposed to do? Hang around town hall all day till you get the number?
You can hang out with me.
There are people who do it.
Yeah, true. Okay, great. So if John doesn't make recalc, just John Parsons, we still have 4 for a quorum, and Mike, if Mike doesn't make it. And I haven't heard from John Sasso, so maybe he can make recalc too, so. Great.
So, to Mark's point, for the next meeting, we better, not the one with the architects, but for the next regular recalc meeting, we'll have communication plan back to make sure that's up.
I have a question, on our site visits, which I think are very useful. How do we connect that up with what BHA is? How does that?
We just
inform our
submitted to them, right?
Well,
Yeah, I think
is it
that's what
just
we talked
to-
about, but-
is submitted to them, or is it to help us say,
What we
oh,
want.
we,
I think it's.
we
a-
really need this big deal and or
See, I thought we already had done that.
Yeah.
I thought we we're focusing more on the programming aspects. this time
Programming,
around.
transport and finance.
Yes.
But even with the programming, understanding the number of people that come to different events and things like that. So the great news, I think, is BHNA has a lot of experience with this in different communities, and based on community size can come back and make some recommendations. And then what we do adds to it. Since we checked out this place, we really like that they do
Right.
X, Y, Z in
What I'm hoping, or what I would hope to get out of it is BHNA, look at what we produce from these site visits and help us put some of it in context of what that really means. You know, Wakefield has schools, and they have a lot of space, but they don't have much staff, and they don't have, do other things, or tell context. There's a big variation in what I've seen so far from you guys about
Yeah, there is.
how much goes on in various places.
Part of this too, I think, is so that when we're presenting to town meeting and to the voters, that we know what's going on all around us.
Right.
And the things that we like, the things that we can share, the things that really need to be here. Because
In the context of what it means.
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
You know-
so we need to gather even just for that reason to be able to then say, hey, here's all the stuff we've learned. This is
Like
why.
Berlin
this is
does all this great stuff, but Leahy pays for half of it. So
No, they-
Right?
35,000. The town kicks in 600.
We just need to put a Wegmans in a big mall like that, we'll be all set.
Oh, yeah, no, their tax base is.
Yeah. But maybe there are some of these corporations that are in this town would be willing to ante up and help us with some things.
Well, I
you
think,
never know.
Right.
well, I think if
Right,
you,
never say never.
you wouldn't get like one entity probably to put up that kind of money, but you might be able to get a couple of thousand here, a couple of thousand there, that sort of. And I think that's a definite possibility.
Yeah, like the Cummings Foundation, I believe, got a room named after them at the Andover Senior Center, and they donated a certain amount. I wanna say it was like 25,000. I can confirm with Jane, over there.
Is
but
Jordan Silver, they seem somewhat charitable.
Could be.
No, yeah,
So-
it takes,
Give us furniture.
it takes time to do it, and then it would be kind of who's gonna be.
Oh, yeah,
it'll
we're gonna
cost.
need that, we're
Better
gonna
believe
need
it.
that.
Yep, and I think there was
FF&E.
a grant too that they got some of their fitness equipment through like an ADA grant too. They,
Oh, 80.
yeah, they got all of their fitness equipment funded through an ADA grant. So,
This is part of our learning, hopefully, too, is kind of
Yeah.
where
but sometimes I get mixed up on who does what, so don't quote me on,
Yeah.
I just know that it.
But it's going into the forums, right? So. we're
Yes,
keeping track.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. So when's the next
Yes,
meeting?
next week. Well, next week we have a meeting.
Yeah.
So I would say not for a couple of weeks anyway, at least 3 weeks. Oh, we just want to go into February.
Yeah.
Is there,
I'd like to look at.
I already have a plurality here saying February, sounds good to me.
Not Mondays in February, because John and I are probably gonna go to the Beanpot game, right, John?
Ooh,
So the 7th is possible, the 7th is a Wednesday. The 14th is Valentine's Day, I'm gonna suggest that's not a good.
The 7th works.
Well, no, 21st, that's, well, I don't know if it's a school vacation week affects anybody here. No, so like, that's a possibility. How about your schedule?
yep, I think the 7th and the 21st are both good for me.
By your
All
preference?
emails you.
I would have to do the 7th by Zoom, but
John? How about you, John? Preference between the
Yeah,
seven?
no, I have no preference. The only thing I can't do is February 1st. That's the day I turn 80.
And why can't you make it then?
We'll have cake.
You
Is that
better
allowed
have
during-
that more than cake.
Allowed during meetings?
All right, so let's make it
I got on a rum cake.
February 7th, 7 o'clock. Is the room available?
I know.
Check. Oh, you can,
And you mentioned in terms of agenda items, definitely communications
Communication would be
plan
one,
and things. So
All the
last night,
updates.
at the select board last night, Council on Aging made a presentation.
It was
Aces,
very good, very good.
awesome.
Nancy.
And what was for this in terms of the budget?
No, it really was sharing with the community what's going on in terms of the senior center programs, attendance.
What they do, what they've done.
I can send you the
recovery from
PowerPoint.
COVID.
Recovery,
Oh, that'd be
COVID.
good, yeah.
and-
Yeah,
and
she sent it yesterday.
really kind of,
so.
drumbeat, but that'd be a great thing for us to talk about.
Yeah, okay. Can you add that, make sure that that's.
And one of the things that
Yeah,
that
so
I would like to
communication
highlight for that,
plan.
that they mentioned that, one of the real drawbacks of the senior center is not enough outdoor space, and, that there was, that they had on their, bocce and pickleball.
Yep.
They didn't actually say those words, but it was on this.
It's a bocce ball and pickle. It's probably supposed to be bocce and pickleball.
Pickleball might be disrupting to the other activities. There's a noise.
Well, I can make some noise, you make those balls.
It looks like the room's available too, John.
Someone's gotta go to MIT, John. Go to the engineers and say, can you make a ball that doesn't make as much noise? See?
They are
They
getting,
must
they
be
are
working.
making it quieter. It's actually quite a bit quieter than it was,
Yeah, yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, so.
Think about ping pong, right? Ping pong started out with hard paddles. To foam paddle, this thing's got much quieter. Anyway.
And different, huh?
Yeah, actually, very different.
And if anybody has any other, agenda items, please, because anybody can submit. More than welcome to do so.
So we should definitely have an update.
Okay.
Yeah.
So communication plan and the COA presentation.
And an update on the architects, where they're at.
If you do the meetings in Zoom, you can record them so that if people wanna look at them later. Like how this next one.
Oh, the stakeholder ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
It
know,
might be,
because I think our CTV is on this one. So maybe if it's posted, they'll be at those two, recording them, the stakeholder meetings next week.
We should ask them.
Yeah,
yeah, and if you do it, you can just record it yourself, you don't
Yeah.
need RCTV or anybody else.
right,
It's just a file.
right.
Just so I capture this communication plan, architect update. What was that quick?
The COA presentation.
Is it, you think as an agenda item?
No.
I think it was
No,
part of the.
she'll send it out to people.
In the chat.
No, I'm talking about for the next meeting, agenda item. You mentioned.
Oh, well, the agenda will get finalized by
Okay.
chair,
All right.
but those are some suggestions.
Okay.
That you get to control it.
So lucky.
No. Yes,
I just,
like I
I
said,
just bring my suggestions
I
too,
have
but
never
everyone.
rejected an
makes them.
agenda item.
Yeah.
And we're always more than, always open and looking for helpful agenda items. John Sasso was here, I'm sure he'd have like
Oh, I
half a
know.
dozen
Where is
things
he?
to-
Where is he?
Yeah,
to
We'll be in
add
touch,
to
I'm
it.
sure.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and so we'll take the roll call. John Parsons,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
yes.
No.
Yes.
And meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.